Hello there. Today I'm finishing up my quick look at some of the wines from the Glaetzer family, from Ben Glaetzer from the Barossa Valley. And this is Wallace, which is a Shiraz Grenache from 2021. The family has paid tribute to Ben's mother Judith in the naming of another of their wines, the Shiraz the Bishop, but evidently Wallace is also a family name from her side of the family, so this is them paying tribute to their Scottish heritage with the naming of this particular wine. And their wines concentrate largely on Shiraz, and this wine contains 16% of Grenache, and I think it's fascinating to see the difference in style that they've been able to create with just with that tiny amount of Grenache. This is a wine again from the Ebenezer region, so at the north of the Barossa Valley, and it's an area with some quite particular soil types that sort of suit low-yielding old Shiraz vines. So you've got quite friable topsoils of clay and sand over a hard pan of limestone. So what this does is it forces the vines to send their roots down quite deep, and it spreads out across the limestone because it can't penetrate that except in areas where it's fractured. And then the vine can take water from the limestone, which can act as a sponge, but only lets out water quite slowly. So in 2021 they had some early season rain, which made up for the fact they'd had two very, very dry vintages, and that put a little bit of life into the vines and gave slightly higher yields than they'd had in the previous 2 years. The wines are made, the two portions of the wine are made in very different ways. They try and protect the Grenache from too much oak, whereas the Shiraz portion is aged for 16 months in oak. It's second and third fill oak, so it's not brand new. There's a combination of 80% of French oak and 20% of American. So the American oak should give that little bit more cedary, vanilla sort of style there. And so the two are then blended prior to bottling, so that you've got the freshness of the Grenache and a Shiraz that is sort of less oaky powerful than some of their other wines. So let's have a look at the wine and see what we make of it, shall we? I mean, first thing to say is there's a lovely vibrancy of colour. It's a ruby red. Grenache tends to be not quite as deep as the Shiraz in terms of its colour, and I think you can just about see through this. It's not quite opaque. As I swirl it, there are legs forming on the edge of the glass fairly readily. The wine is 14.5% alcohol, so that's to be expected. And let's have a look at the aroma, shall we? Look, it may be auto-suggestion, but in the notes that I've read on this, they suggest an aroma of rose petals, and there is a lovely sort of lifted floral, maybe rose petals, maybe a touch of peony, that sort of quite beautifully sort of intensely perfumed red fruit, and that's over some nice ripe mulberry notes, some ripe plum notes, with perhaps a little bit of cedar in the background there, but generally it's a ripe red fruit and quite a lifted, high-toned, perfumed red fruit there that we're getting. So let's have a taste. There's a freshness and openness. I mean, this is a medium-bodied wine. It's got a reasonable weight, but it's very, very smooth, and the tannins are very supple and broad and open. You've got that lovely perfumed red fruit note there, sort of starting off with a sort of maybe a rose petal and perhaps slightly spicy raspberry, through to a sort of a juicy mulberry, and almost a nice juicy red cherry note as well there. But not quite going through to the sort of the black fruit end of the spectrum. And I think to an extent that's the acidity helping to lift that. The mid palate is given a little bit of weight and warmth by the alcohol, but the alcohol's not cutting off the finish. There's still some of that lovely red fruit finding its way to the finish, where there is a little bit of, and I think that's maybe where the alcohol note coming in, a little bit of sort of drying, cedary, perhaps slightly exotic spice note there, maybe a little bit of cinnamon coming through. It's not a powerful note, it's right at the back, but it's just a gentle influence there. And that, I suppose the slightly drying note of the tannins is also coming through as a dusty cocoa note at the finish as well. The wine probably has the potential to age. I wouldn't think that you'd actually want to age it for that long. I mean, yeah, maybe 5 or 6 years it would very happily stand up to. But there's such a lovely fresh perfume now that actually I think that's part of the wine's charm. And I would be tempted, if I had a case of this, to be drinking it fairly soon, rather than particularly aging it for a long time. I think that's a very attractive wine. I think it's a very enjoyable drink. So yes, that is Wallace by Ben Glaetzer. It's a Shiraz Grenache 2021 from the Ebenezer district in South Australia's Barossa Valley. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found it interesting. I hope you'll leave your comments, let us know what you think about these wines and other wines you've tried. I do hope you'll like and share the video, but also do please make sure you join us again, won't you? Bye for now.